Well, thanks for your company here on Richo and Jones. Now, in our Tamworth, well, it's not our Tamworth studio, but it is a Tamworth studio, is Barnaby Joyce, Minister for Agriculture. Welcome, Barnaby.
Good evening, Richo. This is actually the ladies' change room for the jockeys. This is the women's jockey room. So I'm reporting to you from Jockey Central Tamworth.
Well, as long as none of them are changing just at the moment, that's okay. Now, look, yesterday obviously was a very big day for agriculture in Australia. Some think it's terrific, some don't. Generally speaking, what's your view of the FTA with China?
Yeah, well, it's good, Richo. It's something we've been trying to land for a while. Obviously, the cattle industry like it because it's great for them. Dairy industry, it's going to be bring an explosion basically in the exports in dairy, which is good. Horticultural likes it. Sugar is not as happy, obviously, and obviously we have cotton that says that it could have been better for them. Now, you've got to take the good with the bad. Nothing's a perfect deal. If you hang around waiting for perfect, you end up giving up on everything. And you've got to, once the deal's on the table, they'll basically say to you, mate, it's that or nothing. And believe you me, nothing is what you will get if you hang out too long.
Barnaby, your views on many of these things are similar to mine. The only difference is I can express mine and you can't because you're a cabinet minister. Now he's laughing. We all agree with the general thrust, free trade agreements. I'm not opposed to that. But you and I talked some months ago about Cubby Station, which was sold to Chinese interests. It is the largest irrigation farm in the Southern Hemisphere. 93,000 hectares, a water capacity equal to that of Sydney Harbour. Now, we've had the Chinese Premier in Tasmania today, and I note that the Tasmanian Agriculture Minister said on Friday that deals were imminent and that Chinese private and state-owned companies were ready to buy, and I stress that word because Canberra doesn't seem to understand the difference between invest and own, ready to buy investor-ready land and water farm packages. And he said this, negotiations are still being worked through, but we have water and land for sale, and we encourage Chinese investment. If you today, Barnaby Joyce, went out and said on behalf of the Australian government you were going to buy these dairy farms in Western Australia, which they've done, you're going to buy them in Victoria, which they've done, you were going to buy them in Tasmania, which they've done, you're going to buy agriculture, pastoral land in the Northern Territory, which they've done, they'd accuse you of being the greatest socialist of all time. Why do we allow then China to buy up the very things that they supposedly are assisting us with tariff removal? They own the damn dairy farms. They're owning and they admit they want to own more.
Well, obviously you would know that the fallout from the Cubby decision was that we fought for and got a change in the Foreign Investment Review Board laws, and you know the concerns I had with that, and that's why it's gone from 240 million down to 15 for individuals. It's gone down to 53 million for corporations and remains at $1 for state-owned enterprises and has to be reviewed by the Foreign Investment Review Board. Before, as you know, you go to the north end of town and buy $240 million or $239 million worth of property one day, go to the south end of town, buy $239 million the next day, go to the west end, 239 the next day, and go to the other end and get 239 the next day, and you never had to go to the Foreign Investment Review Board, and I thought that was outrageous, so did my colleagues, and we've brought that down to 15 million, and then if you come back the next day and buy $1 worth of land, it goes back to the Foreign Investment Review Board. Now, I also know that at times issues go to the Foreign Investment Review Board and they're quietly told don't go any further. I understand completely the sensitivities that are abounding in regards to the ownership of land. I support investment, that is taking something from one level to a higher level, but many of the instances we're getting just transfer of ownership, and we do have a substantial amount of land that is now totally foreign-owned or partially foreign-owned. In fact, if you laid it out on a map, it would be about 2.2 to 2.5 times the size of the landmass of Victoria, which is quite a reasonable amount of land. And when I brought that up in China, they said, well, that's the equivalent to about Sichuan province. And I said, would you allow us to buy that? And they said, of course we wouldn't. But we are the most liberal nation on earth in allowing people to invest in our nation, but we have to manage the sensitivities that come with that. I'm fully politically aware of that. In any political arrangement, especially, you'll have differences of views. I suppose I represent more of a view that says I have more concerns than others. But yes, we also, I fully support investment where it's going to take something to a higher level, where the farmer, the mum and dad, the Australian mum and dad gets a better return going through their farm gate and they get a better return onto their kitchen table, then of course I will support that. We must trade with China, we must trade with India, we must trade with Japan, and we must trade with Korea, the United States and everybody else.
No one denies that.
Because we just don't have the domestic market.
Barnaby, I listened to those numbers. Now, I was talking to Bob Catter last night on another show, and I'm trying to work out what's the percentage of the arable land in Australia that is now foreign owned. Does anyone know that? Can anyone give me an answer?
Well, we were promised a register by the coalition before the last election. Now, the cynic would say the reason we don't have the register is we didn't want to embarrass China before the signing of a free trade agreement. We still don't have the register. It oughtn't to be too difficult, Barnaby, to get a register of who owns what.
Well, we want for that to happen, Alan, in very short order. In fact, I believe the Treasurer has made a statement that it will happen imminently. I take him at his word for that. It is something, you're dead right, we did take it to an election, it is a promise. We have made sure that in our Korean negotiation that was part of the negotiation, in our Japanese negotiation that was part of the negotiation, and our Chinese negotiation that was part of the negotiation. So there are no surprises for any of these countries. They know exactly what our views are.
Barnaby, I strongly believe... Go on. I think China... China will only do one thing. That's all they'll do. You can go on forever and a day about what this means to us. You can't blame them. They're acting out of self-interest, and good on them. That's exactly what they're about. When they want to buy dairy farms and beef farms in this country, which they're doing it to feed middle-class China. They love our milk, and so you've got this outfit, Ningo Dairy Group. I mean, I could be here till 9 o'clock tonight with all of these outfits that have purchased, but it's one of China's biggest milk companies. They've spent $15 million buying 3 dairy farms in the Gippsland. They say, we are going to buy more in Victoria and New South Wales. They say we're going to build, these are their words, our own $6 million milk processing plant at Curnow in Victoria. And its Vice President, Harry Wang, said, our aim is to own and control all parts of the milk supply chain in Australia and in other industries. Now, they've told us, but we would have no hope of doing that in China. They're playing us off a break.
Well, I don't have any arguments with you if you say that Chinese businessmen are very good at doing business. That's how their economy, in a short time, has got to the, I think now the largest purchasing price parity. But what I also say is, if we have got to get a better price, Alan, for our milk, for our beef. I'm sick and tired of the major supermarkets just saying, oh, we're just going to sell your milk for $1. I'm sick and tired saying to our dairy farmers, well, you just got to be happy being the poorest person on the street. I'm sick and tired of other people, not from your show, from other shows, saying that there's something insidious about farmers wanting a better price for their product. We have got to get them paid the fair price for their endeavours. And this has happened, Alan. We've got milk now moving out of Norco, being flown into Shanghai, where they're prepared to pay between $7 and $12 a litre for it. We've got beef that is forcing up the price of beef. It's forcing up the price of products of citrus, so that for once in our life, we can actually start getting a better price back to the farmer.
I agree with you, but wouldn't it be nice if we owned the farms? Now, for example, the Bright Factory, and you're aware of them, they are one of the biggest outfits in China. And their manager, Zhong Wang, said, and I quote, the clean and green and the food safety record is what we value. We would like to start with dairy and move to all other foods from Australia. Now, that being the case, when they say we'll remove tariffs on dairy, we'll remove tariffs on beef, we'll remove tariffs on seafood, we'll remove tariffs on horticulture, of course they would. Well, they aim to increasingly own our capacity to produce those products.
I agree with you. If you're asking me, do I think they're good at business? Of course, they are. And of course, if we got to a point where we just completely emasculated our own capacity to be a participant in our market, then fools are we. And I hope that is why we have the Foreign Investment Review Board, to stop that from happening. But I am happy that they're in the marketplace, and more I seem to be reading the tea leaves from them, that they understand the sensitivities that we have here, and they want to be more partners with us and buying us out.
Well,
but
Barnaby,
if we let them do it, we're stupid. I hope that that's what the Foreign Investment Review Board stops from happening.
They've never said no to anyone. They've never said no.
I was going to say the foreign investment. I wouldn't want to
we have actually
bet the old dinner tonight on the Foreign Investment Review Board doing the right thing. They never seem to. But I want to just take you back to the agreement itself. Now, you've said how good it is for some of these areas, but I look at them and there's 4 years for this and 9 years for that. I mean, what sort of vigilance do we have to make sure that the right thing's being done over all those years? I mean, I'm not having a crack at the Chinese, but they have been known, you know, to change agreements. They have been known when things don't suit them to just act differently.
Yeah, look, I had the same views as you for a long while, Richo, but I strongly believe that when their president turns up, it's an incredible loss of face if they step away from an agreement they made, and I don't think that they would be doing that.
Barnaby, we have a free trade agreement. Sorry.
If they didn't want to do it, they just would tell us to stick it in our pipe and smoke it.
But we have a free trade agreement with Thailand, and a car which costs about $35,000 to make in Australia costs $100,000 in Thailand. Thailand had other ways of overcoming the tariff issue. They imposed other charges. So we're not selling any more cars to Thailand. But if I could just bring you back to this thing today, the Premier said it's great that he's here. I know why he's here. They're trying to put food on the plates of middle-class Chinese. And Van Diemen's Land Company today has been sold to Chinese interests. Yeah. That's 28 dairy farms, which milk 30,000 cows, and they said they intend to build wind farms as well. Will they qualify for energy certificates, the renewable energy certificates as well? And they've made it. I mean, it's a state-owned Chinese outfit. Now, are we standing by and saying that's terrific? 28 dairy farms, 30,000 cows. Wouldn't we be better sticking money or seeking China to put some money in as investment rather than ownership, and we get some return from those 30,000 cows? We're going to get nothing.
Well, obviously, that's the question for the Foreign Investment Review Board, and I know that Joe Hockey has a strong interest in making sure we get a better balance in the Foreign Investment Review Board, that we get people actually off the land in the Foreign Investment Review Board who probably have stronger views and can express some of the views that you're expressing very ably there, Alan, within that Foreign Investment Review Board. I mean, I don't disagree. If you completely sell a large proportion of your capacity to produce a product, whether that's milk or cotton or beef, then we are a fool. And of course we will get caught short, and of course fools are there to be exploited, and that's what you do to fools. Once, you know, they turn up and you exploit them. But I hope that the Foreign Investment Board, and I believe it will be the case, that they won't let that happen, because that would definitely be against our national interest.
They have not said no. See, in the last, just shifting from this to the general ownership, since 2003, 30,000 established homes have been sold in Australia, 23 billion, to foreign interests. In the last 12 months, $5.9 billion worth of established homes. Now, that's against the law. And the Foreign Investment Review Board throws their hands up at the Kelly O'Dwyer inquiry and says, oh, look, we've only got 20 people here to monitor confirmation with the laws of the land, so it's open slather. Here are people buying established homes against the law, and there has been no divestment. Well, I'm sorry, 17 in 11 years. Of 30,000 have been told, you're not entitled to buy established homes, sell it, and let's get it back. Now, God, you talk about the Foreign Investment Review Board. I wouldn't trust them to get me up in the morning.
One of my frustrations, Alan, was one of the only rejections, or some of the only rejections I ever saw were for domestic housing. Yeah. And in the past, and GrainCorp is, I believe, a very good decision where we've stood up for our national interests. Otherwise, we would divest the eastern coast of Australia from our counter-cyclical white grain trade, which, as the Egyptians would have told you when the Romans came over and took it, it's one of the most powerful things you can have, the capacity to trade your own grain. That's where you make the money. And but we've stood by that, and we still own it, and that's a good thing. I'm absolutely of the view that, as you say, we need a transparent register, and that's why we're fighting for one. Richo asked me before, what portion of arable land do they own? Unfortunately, the answer to that question is, Richo, we don't know, because we don't have a register across this nation. And that's why we definitely do need one, and that's why I'm pushing for one. That's why the National Party are pushing one, and that's why the
Barnaby,
coalition
I know you are. I accept that, because one thing I said off air, the thing I always liked about you, you actually believe what you say, and I can always tell when you don't believe what you say because you're supporting a cabinet decision, you say it through gritted teeth. But the reality is that you've got a lot of people in that cabinet who are economic dries, who simply don't agree with the things that you and Alan have been saying over the last 10 minutes. They just don't agree. Now, you know that.
That's what... Yeah, but that's been the case in Australian history since after the Second World War. You always... I mean, that's why the coalition works at the best. The robust discussion between predominantly the National Party view and probably the economic dries view, and there are other people in between. And there's also the discernment of your colleagues who can look at the argument and say, well, actually, I'm more inclined towards the Barnaby Joyce view on this one, or I'm inclined towards the economic dries view on this one. That's what a cabinet does. If you took away either party, if you just left it with one group or the other group, then I don't think that would lead to a good business
Barnaby,
outcome.
could I just... sorry, can I just make one final point, because we're running out of time. What concerns people out there in viewer land is that this free trade agreement is just carved out in secrecy. There is no scrutiny. I don't have a copy of it. I'm a voter. It's signed. Under the Constitution, it's the equivalent of a treaty. So it's the province of executive government. Some of these bilateral treaties don't even have to go to the Cabinet. Parliament has no power to repudiate these treaties. All Parliament can do is debate. The treaty goes on the table of the Parliament for 15 days, and that's the end of it. Is this democratic government where a little coterie and a cabal of people get together, do a deal, get hairs on their chest because they're talking to China, and the electorate have no say, the Parliament has no say, there's no capacity to repudiate? Oh, there's something seriously wrong with the process here.
Well, I mean, it does go through a cabinet process. It does go through, I think there's also the Treaties Committee. There's also this wonderful thing called the Australian people on the ballot box. If you play silly buggers with them, well, you won't be there for long. And believe you me, I believe we're vastly further ahead with this agreement with China than without one. Because we've got to acknowledge that you just mentioned before, they've got their people moving into the middle class. Good luck and God bless them. That's great. They're wanting to buy a premium product at a premium price. They are actually forcing up the price of our agricultural product. We are actually getting a better price to our farmers because of them, and that's my goal. My goal is to make sure our farmers, for once in their life, start getting paid a fair price, because, by gosh, they haven't. I never had the previous government arguing about, oh, isn't this unfair? We've got dairy farmers on $7 an hour if you work out what their actual cost of labour and what they're getting paid is. They never stood up for them then and said, oh, let's make sure that the cattle farmers get a better deal. Let's make sure the people who are out there crutching sheep and shearing sheep and looking up, doing all the work that you have to do for the wool industry, that they get paid a fair price. No, I never heard that argument. No one ever seemed to give a toss about them. Then all of a sudden the farmers start actually look like they're going to make a buck, and the sky's going to fall.
No, I don't think it's going to fall because they're going to make a buck. We all want them to make a buck, believe me. Barnaby, look, we have to leave it there. You're
wonderful.
You are always really good. Now, if you're in town before Christmas, make sure you give me a ring. I dare say Sky can shout you a lunch.
Oh, yeah.
All right?
Kiss of death,
we won't invite him, but you and I will have a good time.
Barnaby and the kiss of death.
I can be tight and emotional.
He can be both, mate.
And good luck with the rain.
Barnaby Joyce in Tamworth, and we'll be back in just a moment with Brent.